Wish you all a blissful Balaram Purnima. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevayam Bhagavati Ruttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So today is the most auspicious day of the year, called Balaram Purnima, the Guru of all Gurus, the Balaram who came as Nityananda Balarama, Nityananda Prabhu in Kali Yuga, to deliver all the fallen conditioned souls, 4 types of people, the wretched, the fallen, the fools, and who is distressed. So these 4 kinds of people have no any mention in the Vedas for their deliverance, but Balaram, Nityananda Balarama, has delivered even them. And that is the reason we are all in Krishna consciousness today. And we are going to read from Lord Krishna book, chapter 65, Lord Balarama visits Vrindavana. Lord Balarama became very anxious. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karodi Vachalam Pangulangai Tegiri Maturpata Mahamande Sri Gurundena Tarinam Paramanda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashai Bhutale Srimate Jai Pataka Swami Nitanamine Namo Chari Padayane Taikar Pradayane Gorgada Damadai Nagara Gramatarine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashai Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitanamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nevise Shunyavade Pasatya Desatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Dvaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Ram Hare Hare. Chapter 65, Krishna book, Lord Balarama visits Vrindavana. Lord Balarama became very anxious to see his father and mother in Vrindavana. Therefore, with great enthusiasm, he started on a chariot for Vrindavana. The inhabitants of Vrindavana had been anxious to see Krishna and Balarama for a very long time. When Lord Balarama returned to Vrindavana, all the cowherd boys and the gopis had grown up, but still, on his arrival, they all embraced him, and Balarama embraced them in reciprocation. After this, he came before Maharaja Nanda and Yashoda and offered his respectful obeisances. In response, Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaja offered their blessings unto him. They addressed him as Jagadishwara, or the Lord of the universe, who maintains everyone. The reason for this was that Krishna and Balarama maintain all living entities, and yet Nanda and Yashoda were put into such difficulties on account of their absence. Feeling like this, they embraced Balarama and, seating him on their laps, began their perpetual crying, wetting Balarama with their tears. Lord Balarama then offered his respectful obeisances to the elderly cowherd men and accepted the obeisances of the younger cowherd men. Thus, according to the different ages and relationships, Lord Balarama exchanged feelings of friendship with them. He shook hands with those who were equal in age and friendship, and with the loud laughing embracing each other, embraced each one of them. After being received by the cowherd men and boys in the gopis and the King Nanda and Yashoda, Lord Balarama sat down, feeling satisfied, and they all surrounded him. First, Lord Balarama inquired from them about their welfare, and then, since they had not seen him for such a long time, they began to ask him different questions. The inhabitants of Vrindavana had sacrificed everything for Krishna, simply being captivated by the luminous eyes of the Lord. Because of their great desire to love Krishna, they never desired anything like elevation to the heavenly planets or merging into the effulgence of Brahman to become one with the absolute truth. They were not even interested in enjoying a life of opulence, but were satisfied in living a simple life in the village as cowherds. They were always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and did not desire any personal benefits. And they were all so much in love with him that in his absence, their voices faltered when they began to inquire from Balarama ji.
First, Nanda Maharaja and Yashoda Mai inquired, "My dear Balarama, are our friends like Vasudeva and others in the family doing well? Now you and Krishna are grown up, married men with children. In the happiness of family life, do you sometimes remember your poor father and mother, Nanda Maharaja and Yashoda Devi? It is very good news that the most sinful king Kamsa has been killed by you, and that our friends like Vasudeva and the others who had been harassed have now been relieved. It is also very good news that you and Krishna defeated Jarasandha and Kalayavana, who is now dead, and that you are now living in the fortified residence. You are now living in the fortified residence in Dwaraka." When the gopis arrived, Lord Balarama glanced over them with the loving eyes. Being overjoyed, the gopis, who had long been mortified on account of Krishna and Balarama's absence, began to ask about the welfare of the two brothers. They specifically asked Balarama whether Krishna was enjoying his life surrounded by the enlightened women of Dwarakapuri. Does he sometimes remember his father Nanda and his mother Yashoda and other friends with whom he so intimately behaved while in Vrindavana? Does Krishna have any plans to come here to see his mother Yashoda? And does he remember us gopis who are now pitiably bereft of his company? Krishna may have forgotten us in the midst of the cultured women of Dwaraka. But as far as we are concerned, we still remember him by collecting flowers and sewing them into garlands. When he does not come, however, we simply pass our time by crying. If only he would come here and accept these garlands we have made. Dear Lord Balarama, descendants of the Sarata, you know that we would give up everything for Krishna's friendship. Even in great distress, one cannot give up the connection of family members. But although it might be impossible for others, we gave up our fathers, mothers, sisters, and relatives. But then Krishna, without carrying a pinch of our renunciation, all of a sudden renounced us and went away. He broke off our intimate relationship without serious consideration and left for a foreign country. But he was so clever and cunning that he manufactured very nice words. He said, "My dear gopis, please do not worry. The service you have rendered me is impossible for me to repay. After all, we are all women, so how could we disbelieve him? Now we can understand that his sweet words were simply for cheating us." Protesting Krishna's absence from Vrindavana, another gopi said, "My dear Balramji, we are of course village girls, so Krishna could cheat us in that way. But what about the women of Dwaraka? Don't think they are so foolish as we are. We village women might be misled by Krishna, but the women in the city of Dwaraka are very clever and intelligent. Therefore, I would be surprised if such city women could be misled by Krishna and could believe in his words." Then another gopi began to speak. "My dear friends," he said, "Krishna is very clever in using words. No one can compete with him in that art. He can manufacture such colorful words and talk so sweetly that the heart of any woman could be misled. Besides that, he has perfected the art of smiling very attractively. And by seeing his smile, women become mad after him and give themselves to him without hesitation." Another gopi, after hearing this, said, "My dear friends, what is the use of talking about Krishna? If you are at all interested in passing time by talking, let us talk on some subject other than him. If cruel Krishna can pass his time without us, why can't we pass our time without Krishna? Of course, Krishna is passing his days without us very happily, but we cannot pass our days happily without him." When the gopis were talking in this way, Their feelings of Krishna became more and more intense, and they were experiencing Krishna's smiling, Krishna's words of love, Krishna's attractive feature, Krishna's characteristics, and Krishna's embraces. By the force of their ecstatic feeling, it appeared to them that Krishna was personally present and dancing before them because of their sweet remembrance of Krishna. They could not check their tears and they began to cry without consideration. Lord Balarama, of course, could understand the ecstatic feeling of the gopis, and therefore he wanted to pacify them. He was expert in presenting an appeal, and thus treating the gopis very respectfully. He began to narrate the stories of Krishna so tactfully that the gopis became satisfied. To keep the gopis in Vrindavana satisfied, Lord Balarama stayed there continuously for 2 months, namely the months of Chaitra and April and Vaishakha, March, April and Vaishakha, April, May. For those 2 months, he kept himself among the gopis. And he passed every night with them in the forest of Vrindavana to satisfy their desire for conjugal love. Thus, Balarama also enjoyed the Rasa dance with the gopis during those 2 months. Since the season was springtime, the breeze on the bank of the Yamuna was blowing very mildly, carrying the aroma of different flowers, especially the flowers known as Kaumudi. Moonlight filled the sky and spread everywhere, and thus the banks of the Yamuna appeared very bright and pleasing. And Lord Balarama enjoyed the company of the gopis there. The demigod, known as Varuna, sent his daughter Varuni in the form of liquid honey, oozing from the hollows of the tree. Because of this honey, the whole forest became aromatic. And the sweet aroma of the liquid honey, Varuni, captivated Balramji. Balramji and all the gopis became very much attracted by the taste of the Varuni, and all of them drank it together. While drinking this natural beverage, all the gopis chanted the glories of Lord Balarama. And Lord Balarama felt very happy, as if he had become intoxicated by drinking that Varuni beverage. His eyes rolled on the pleasing attitude, and he was decorated with long garlands of forest flowers. The whole situation appeared to be a great function of happiness. Because of this transcendental bliss, Lord Balarama smiled beautifully, and the drops of perspiration decorating his face appeared like soothing morning dew. While Balarama was in that happy mood, he desired to enjoy the company of the gopis in the waters of Yamuna. Therefore, he called the Yamuna to come nearby. But the Yamuna neglected the order of Balramji, considering him intoxicated. Lord Balarama became very much displeased at Yamuna's neglecting his order. He immediately wanted to scratch the land near the river with his plowshare. Lord Balarama has 2 weapons, a plow and a club, from which he takes service when they are required. This time he wanted to bring the Yamuna by force, and he took the help of his plow. He wanted to punish the Yamuna because she did not come in obedience to his order. He addressed the Yamuna, "You wretched river, why did not care for my order? Now I shall teach you a lesson. You did not come to me voluntarily. Now with the help of my plow, I shall force you to come. I shall divide you into hundreds of scattered streams." When the Yamuna was threatened like this, she became greatly afraid of the power of Balarama and immediately came in person, falling at his lotus feet and praying thus, "My dear Balarama, you are the most powerful personality and you are pleasing to everyone. Unfortunately, I forgot your glories, exalted position. But now I have come to my senses and I remember that you hold all the planetary system on your head merely by your partial expansion, Sesha. You're the sustainer of the whole universe. My dear Supreme Personality of Godhead, you're full with 6 opulences. Because I forgot your omnipotence, I have mistakenly disobeyed your order, and thus I have become a great offender. But my dear Lord, please know that I am a soul surrendered unto you, who are very affectionate to your devotees. Therefore, please excuse my impudence and mistakes. And by your costless mercy, may you now release me. Upon displaying the submissive attitude, the Yamuna was forgiven, and when she came nearby, Lord Balarama enjoyed the pleasure of swimming in her waters along with the gopis in the same way that an elephant enjoys himself along with his many she-elephants. After a long time, when Lord Balarama had enjoyed his full satisfaction, he came out of the water, and immediately a goddess of fortune, offered him a nice blue garment and a valuable necklace made of gold. After bathing in Yamuna, Lord Balarama, dressed in blue garments and decorated with golden ornaments, looked very attractive to everyone. Lord Balarama's complexion was white, and when he was properly dressed, he looked exactly like the white elephant of King Indra in the heavenly planets. The river Yamuna still has many small branches due to being scattered by the plowshare of Lord Balarama. Now, all these branches of the river Yamuna still glorify the omnipotence of the Lord Balarama. Lord Balarama and the gopis enjoyed transcendental pastimes together every night for 2 months. The time passed so quickly that all those nights appeared to be only one night. The presence of Lord Balarama, all the gopis and other inhabitants of Vrindavana became as cheerful as they had been before the presence of both brothers and Lord Krishna and Lord Balarama. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of 65th chapter of Krishna. Balarama visits Vrindavana.
Chapter 67. The deliverance of Dvivida Gorilla. Well, Sukadeva Goswami continued to speak on the transcendental pastimes and the characteristic of Lord Krishna. King Parikshit, upon hearing them, became more and more enthusiastic and wanted to hear further. Sukadeva Goswami next narrated the story of Dvivida, the gorilla who was killed by Lord Balarama. This gorilla was a great friend of Bhaumasura or Narakasura, who was killed by Krishna in connection with his kidnapping 16,000 princesses from all over the world. Dvivida was the minister of King Sugriva. His brother Mainda was also a very powerful gorilla king. When Dvivida gorilla heard the story of his friend Bhaumasura's being killed by Lord Krishna, he planned to create mischief throughout the country in order to avenge the death of Bhaumasura. His first business was to set fires in villages, towns, and industrial and mining places, as well as in the residential quarters of the mercantile men who were busy dairy farming and protecting cows. Sometimes he would uproot a big mountain and tear it to pieces. In this way, he created great disturbances all over the country, especially in the province of Katwar. The city of Dwarka was situated in this Katwar province. And because Lord Krishna used to live in this city, Dvivida specifically made it his target of disturbance. Dvivida was as powerful as 10,000 elephants. Sometimes he would go to the seashore and with his powerful hands, he would create so much disturbance in the sea that he would flood the neighboring cities and villages. Often he would go to the hermitages of great saintly persons and sages and cause a great disturbance by smashing their beautiful gardens and orchards. Not only did he create disturbances in that way, but sometimes he would pass urine and stool on their sacred sacrificial arenas. He would thus pollute the whole atmosphere. He also kidnapped both men and women, taking them away from the residential places to the caves of the mountains. After putting them within the caves, he would close the entrances with large chunks of stone, like the Bringi insect, which arrests the carriers away many flies and other insects and puts them within the holes of the trees where it lives. Thus, Dvivida regularly defied the law and order of the country. Not only that, but he would sometimes pollute the female members of many aristocratic families by forcibly raping them, while creating such great disturbances all over the country. Sometimes he heard very sweet musical sounds from a Raivataka mountain. And so he entered that mountain's regions. There he saw Lord Balaram in the midst of many beautiful young girls enjoying their company while singing and dancing. Dvivida became captivated by the beauty of Lord Balarama's body, whose every feature was very beautiful, decorated as he was with a garland of lotus flowers. Similarly, all the young girls present, dressed and garlanded with flowers, exhibited much beauty. Lord Balarama seemed fully intoxicated from drinking the Varuni beverage. And his eyes appeared to be rolling in a drunken state. Lord Balarama appeared just like the king of the elephants in the midst of many she-elephants. This gorilla by the name Dvivida could climb up into the trees and jump from one branch to another. Sometimes he would jerk the branches, creating a particular type of sound, kila kila, so that Lord Balarama was greatly distracted from the pleasing atmosphere. Sometimes Dvivida would come before the women and exhibit different types of caricatures. By nature, young women are apt to enjoy everything with laughter and joking. And when the gorilla came before them, they did not take him seriously, but simply laughed at him. However, the gorilla was so rude that even in the presence of Balarama, he began to show the lower part of his body to the women. And sometimes he would come forward to show his teeth while moving his eyebrows. He disrespected the women, even in the presence of Balarama. Lord Balarama's name suggests, and not only that he is very powerful, but that he takes pleasure in exhibiting extraordinary strength. So he took a stone and threw it at Dvivida. The gorilla, however, artfully avoided being... The gorilla, however, artfully avoided being struck by the stone. In order to insult Balarama, the gorilla took away the earthen pot in which the Varuni was kept. Dvivida, being thus intoxicated with his limited strength, began to tear off all the valuable clothes worn by Balarama and the accompanying young girls. He was so puffed up that he thought Balarama could not do anything to chastise him. And he continued to offend Balaramji and his companions. When Lord Balarama saw the disturbances created by the gorilla and heard that he had already performed many mischievous activities all over the country, he became very angry and decided to kill him. Immediately, he took his club in his hands. The gorilla could understand that now Balarama was going to attack him. To counterattack Balarama, he immediately uprooted a big oak tree, and with great force he came and struck Balarama's head. Lord Balarama, however, immediately caught hold of the big tree and remained undisturbed. Just like a great mountain, to retaliate, he took his club named Sunanda and hit the gorilla with it, severely injuring his head. Currents of blood flowed from the gorilla's head with great force, but the stream of blood simply enhanced its beauty, like a stream of liquid manganese coming out of a great mountain. The striking of Balarama's club did not even slightly disturb him. On the contrary, he immediately uprooted another big oak tree and after clipping off all its leaves, again struck Balarama's head with it. But Balarama, with the help of his club, tore the tree to pieces. Since the gorilla was very angry, he took another tree in his hands and struck Balaram's body. Lord Balaram's body. Again, Lord Balarama tore the tree to pieces and the fighting continued. Each time the gorilla would bring out a big tree to strike Balarama, Lord Balarama would tear the tree to pieces by the striking of his club. And the gorilla Dvivida would clutch another tree from another direction and again attack Balarama in the same way. As a result of this continuous fighting, the forest became treeless. When no more trees were available, Dvivida took help from the hills and threw large pieces of stones like rainfall upon the body of Balarama. Lord Balarama, in a great sporting mode, began to smash those big pieces of stone into mere pebbles. The gorilla, being bereft of all trees and stone slabs, now stood before Balarama and waved his strong fists. Then, with great force, he began to beat Lord Balarama's chest with his fists. This time, Lord Balarama became most angry. Since the gorilla was striking him with his hands, Lord Balarama would not strike him back with his own weapons, the club or the plow. Simply with his fists, he struck the collarbone of the gorilla. This blow proved fatal to Dvivida, who immediately vomited blood and fell unconscious upon the ground. When the gorilla fell, all the hills and forests appeared to totter. After this horrible incident, all the Siddhas, great sages, and saintly persons from the upper planetary system showered flowers on the person of Lord Balarama and vibrated sounds glorifying his supremacy. All of them chanted, "All glories to Lord Balarama. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet. By killing this great demon, Dvivida, you have initiated an auspicious era for the world." All such jubilant sounds of victory were heard from outer space after killing the great demon Dvivida and being worshipped by showers of flowers and glorious sounds of victory. Balarama returned to his capital city, Dwaraka. Thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purport of the 67th chapter of Krishna, the deliverance of Dvivida gorilla.
Wow. Okay, Hari Bol. Ready?
அடுத்தது திறக்கிறேன். Next, chapter 79, the liberation of Balwala and Lord Balarama's touring the sacred places.
Lord Balarama prepared himself to meet the demon Balwala at the time when the demon usually attacked the sacred places. There appeared a great hailstorm. The whole sky became covered with dust, and the atmosphere became surcharged with filthy smell. Just after this, the mischievous demon Balwala began to shower torrents of stool.
Each one paragraph.
And urine and other impure substances on the arena of sacrifice. After this onslaught, the demon himself appeared with a great trident in his hand. He was a gigantic person, and his black body was like a huge mass of carbon. His hair, his beard, and his mustache appeared reddish, like copper, and because of his great beard and mustache, his mouth appeared dangerous and fierce. As soon as he saw the demon, Lord Balarama prepared to attack him. He first considered how he could smash the great demon to pieces. Lord Balarama then called for his plow and club, and they immediately appeared before him. The demon Balwala was flying in the sky, and at the first opportunity, Lord Balarama dragged him down with his plow and angrily smashed the demon's head with his club. Balarama's striking fractured the demon's forehead, making blood flow profusely. Screaming loudly, the demon who had Balwala, who had been such a great disturbance to the pious Brahmanas, fell to the ground like a great mountain with a red oxide peak being stuck and smashed to the ground by thunderbolt. The inhabitants of Naimicharanya, learned sages, the Brahmanas, became most pleased by seeing this, and they offered their respectful prayers to Lord Balarama. They offered their heartfelt blessings to the Lord, and all agreed that none of the Lord Balarama's attempts to do something would ever be a failure. the sages and the Brahmanas then performed a ceremonial bathing of Lord Balarama, just as the demigods bathe King Indra. When he is victorious over the demons, the Brahmanas and sages honored Lord Balarama by presenting him with first-class new clothing and ornaments. And the lotus garland of victory, this garland was the reservoir of all beauty and was everlasting. It was never to be dried up. Okay, Haribol. But Papa bus it on there. Haribol. Haribol.
Okay.
Okay. After this incident, Lord Balarama took permission from the Brahmanas assembled at Naimisharanya and accompanied by other Brahmanas went to the bank of the river Kaushiki. After taking his bath in this holy place, he proceeded toward the river Sarayu and visited the source of the river. Traveling on the bank of the Sarayu river, he gradually reached Prayaga, where he is a confluence of three rivers, the Ganges, Yamuna, and Saraswati. Here also he took his bath, and then he worshipped in the local temples of the demigods, and as enjoyed in the Vedic literatures, offered oblations to the forefathers and sages. He gradually reached the ashrama of the sage Pulaha, and from there went to the rivers Gandaki and Gomati. After this, he took his bath in the river Vipasa. Then he gradually came to the bank of the Sona River. The Sona River is still running as one of the big rivers in Bihar province. He also took his bath there and performed the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. He continued his travels and gradually came to the pilgrimage city of Gaya, where there is a celebrated Vishnu temple. According to the advice of his father, Vasudeva, he offered oblations to the forefathers in his Vishnu temple. From here, he traveled to the delta of the Ganges, where the sacred river Ganges mixes with the Bay of Bengal. This sacred place is called Ganga Sagara. And at the end of January, every year, there is still a great assembly of saintly persons and pious men, just as there is an assembly of saintly persons in Prayaga every year called the Maga Mela Fair. After finishing his bathing and ritualistic ceremonies at Ganga Sagara, Lord Balarama proceeded toward the mountain known as Mahendra Parvata, where he met Parashurama, an incarnation of Lord Krishna, and offered him respect by bowing down before him. After this, Lord Balarama turned towards southern India and visited the banks of the river Godavari. After taking his bath in the river Godavari and performing the necessary ritualistic ceremonies, he gradually visited the other rivers, the Vena, Pampa, and Bhimarati. On the bank of the river Bhimarati is the deity called Swami Kartikeya. After visiting Kartikeya, Lord Balarama gradually proceeded to Sailapura, a pilgrimage city in the province of Maharashtra. Sailapura is one of the biggest districts in Maharashtra province. He then gradually proceeded toward Dravida Desha. Southern India is divided into 5 parts called Panchadravida. Northern India is also divided into 5 parts called Panchagauda. All the important acharyas of the modern age, namely Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, and Nimbarga, adventured themselves in the Dravida provinces. Lord Chaitanya, however, appeared in the Bengal, which is part of the 5 Gauda Deshas. The most important place of pilgrimage in southern India or Dravida is Venkatachala, commonly known as Balaji. After visiting this place, Lord Balarama proceeded toward Vishnu Kanchi, and from there he proceeded along the bank of the Kaveri. While going to Vishnu Kanchi, he visited Siva Kanchi. Lord Balarama took his bath in the river Kaveri. Then he gradually reached Rangakshetra river. The biggest Vishnu temple in the world is in Rangakshetra. And the Vishnu deity there is celebrated as Ranganatha. There is a similar temple of Ranganatha in Vrindavana, although not as big as the temple in Rangakshetra. It is the biggest in Vrindavana. After visiting Rangakshetra, Lord Balarama gradually proceeded toward Madurai. commonly known as the Mathura of southern India. After visiting this place, he gradually proceeded toward Setubandha, the place where Lord Ramachandra constructed the stone bridge from India to Lanka, Ceylon. In this particularly holy place, Lord Balarama distributed 10,000 cows to the local Brahmana priests. It is a Vedic custom that when a rich visitor goes to many places of pilgrimage, he gives the local priests houses, cows, ornaments, and garments as gifts of charity. This system of visiting places of pilgrimage and providing the local Brahmana priests with all necessities of life has greatly deteriorated in this age of Kali. The richer section of the population, because of its degradation in Vedic culture, is no longer attracted by these places of pilgrimage, and the Brahmana priests who depended on such visitors have also deteriorated in the professional duty of helping the visitors. These Brahmana priests in the places of pilgrimage are called Panda or Pandita. This means that they were formerly learned Brahmanas and used to guide the visitors in all details of the purpose of coming there. And thus both the visitors and the priests benefited by mutual cooperation. It is clear from the description of Srimad Bhagavatam that when Lord Balarama was visiting the different places of pilgrimage, he properly followed the Vedic system. After distributing cows at Setubandha, Lord Balarama proceeded toward the Kritamala and Tamaraparani rivers. These two rivers are celebrated as sacred, and Lord Balarama bathed in them both. He then proceeded toward Malaya Hill. This hill is very great, and it is said to be one of 7 peaks called the Malaya Hill. The great sage Agastya used to live there, and Lord Balarama visited him and offered his respects by bowing down before him. After taking the sage's blessing, Lord Balarama, with the sage's permission, proceeded toward the Indian Ocean.
Okay, Haribol. At the point of
the cape known today as Cape Comorin is a big temple of goddess Durga, who is known there as Kanyakumari. This temple of Kanyakumari was also visited by Lord Ramachandra, and therefore it is to be understood that the temple has been existing for millions of years. From there, Lord Balarama went on to visit the pilgrimage city known as Falguna Tirtha, which is on the shore of the Indian Ocean or the Southern Ocean. Falguna Tirtha is celebrated because Lord Vishnu, in his incarnation of Ananta, is lying there. From Falguna Tirtha, Lord Balarama went on to visit another pilgrimage spot known as Pancha-Apsarsa. There also he bathed according to the regulative principles and observed the ritualistic ceremonies. This site is also celebrated as a shrine of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, Lord Balarama distributed 10,000 cows to the local Brahmana priests. From Cape Comorin, Lord Balarama turned toward Kerala. The country of Kerala is still existing in southern India under the name of South Kerala. After visiting this place, he came to Gokarna Tirtha, where Lord Shiva is constantly worshipped. Balarama then visited the temple of Arya Devi, which is completely surrounded by water. From that island, he went on to a place known as Surparaka. After this, he bathed in the rivers known as Tapi, Payoshni, and Nirvindya. And then he came to the forest known as Dandakaranya. This is the same Dandakaranya forest where Lord Ramachandra lived while in exile. Lord Balarama next came to the bank of the river Narmada, the biggest river in central India. On the bank of this sacred Narmada is a pilgrimage spot known as Mahishmati Puri. After bathing there, according to regulative principles, Lord Balarama returned to Prabhasha Tirtha, where he had begun his journey. When Lord Balarama returned to Prabhasha Tirtha, he heard from the Brahmanas that most of the Kshatriyas in the battle of Kurukshetra had been killed. Balarama felt relieved to hear that the burden of the world had been reduced. Lord Krishna and Balarama appeared on this earth to lessen the burden of military strength created by the ambitious Kshatriya kings. This is the way of materialistic life, not being satisfied by the absolute necessities of life. People ambitiously create extra demands, and their illegal desires are checked by the laws of nature or the laws of God, appearing as famine, war, pestilence, and similar catastrophes. Lord Balarama heard that although most of the Kshatriyas had been killed, the Kurus were still engaged in fighting. Therefore, he returned to the battlefield just on the day Bhimasena and Duryodhana were engaged in a personal duel. As well as the well-wisher of both of them, Lord Balarama wanted to stop them, but they would not stop. Padima. Haribol.
ஹரிபோல் வந்த மாதிரி இருந்தது.
Yes, Haribol one time.
Padi.
When Lord Balarama appeared on the scene, King Yudhishthira and his younger brother Nakula and Sahadeva, as well as Lord Krishna and Arjuna, immediately offered him their respectful obeisance, but they did not speak at all. Their reason they were silent was that the Lord Balarama was somewhat affectionate towards Duryodhana.
Haribol. Who heard?
Affectionate towards Duryodhana, who had learned from Balaramji the art of fighting with the club. When the fighting was going on, King Yudhishthira and others thought that Balarama might have come there to say something in favor of Duryodhana, and they therefore remained silent. Both Duryodhana and Bhimasena were very enthusiastic in fighting with clubs, and in the midst of a large audience, each very skillfully tried to strike the other. While attempting to do so, they appeared to be dancing, but nonetheless, it was clear that both of them were very angry. Lord Balarama, wanting to stop the fighting, said, "My dear King Duryodhana and Bhimsena, I know that both of you are great fighters and are well known in the word of great heroes. But still I think that Bhimasena is superior in Duryodhana. Is superior in the art of fighting with the club. Taking this into consideration, my opinion is that neither of you is inferior to the other in fighting. Under the circumstances, there is very little chances that one of you will be defeated.
By the other. Therefore, I request you not to waste your time fighting in this way. I wish you to stop this unnecessary fight. The good instruction given by Lord Balarama to Bhimasena and Duryodhana was intended for the equal benefit of both of them. But they were so enwrapped in anger against each other that they could remember only their long-standing personal enmity. Each thought only of killing the other, and they did not give much importance to the instruction of Lord Balarama. Both of them then became like madmen in remembering the strong accusations and ill behavior they had exchanged with each other. Lord Balarama, being able to understand the destiny awaiting them, was not eager to go further in the matter. Therefore, instead of staying, he decided to return to the city of Dwaraka. When he returned to Dwaraka, he was received with great jubilation by relatives and friends, headed by King Ugrasena and other elderly persons, who all came forward to welcome him. After this, he again went to the holy place of pilgrimage at Naimisharanya, and the sages, saintly persons, and Brahmanas all stood up to receive him. They understood that Lord Balarama, although a Kshatriya, was now retired from the fighting business. The Brahmanas and sages, who were always for peace and tranquility, were very pleased at this. All of them embraced Balarama with great affection. All of them embraced Balarama with great affection and induced him to perform various kinds of sacrifices in that sacred spot of Naimisharanya. Actually, Lord Balarama had no business performing the sacrifices recommended for ordinary human beings. He is the supreme personality of Godhead, and therefore he himself is the enjoyer of all such sacrifices. As such, his exemplary action in performing sacrifices was only to give a lesson to the common man, to show how one should abide by the injunctions of the Vedas. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Balarama, instructed the sages and saintly persons at Naimisharanya on the subject matter of the living entity's relationship with this cosmic manifestation, on how one should regard this whole universe, and on how one should relate with the cosmos in order to achieve the highest goal of perfection. This supreme goal is the understanding that the whole cosmic manifestation rests on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also all-pervading, even within the minutest atom, by the function of his Paramatma feature. Lord Balarama then took the Avabhrita bath, which is taken after finishing sacrificial performances. After taking his bath, he dressed himself in new silken garments and decorated himself with beautiful jewelry. Amidst his relatives and friends, he appeared to be a shining full moon amidst the luminaries in the sky. Lord Balarama is the personality of Godhead Ananta himself. Therefore, he is beyond the scope of understanding by mind, intelligence, or body. He descended exactly like a human being and behaved in that way for his own purposes. We can only explain his activities as the Lord's pastimes. No one can even estimate the extent of the unlimited demonstrations of his pastimes, because he's all-powerful. Lord Balarama is the original Vishnu. Therefore, anyone remembering these pastimes of Lord Balarama in the morning and evening will certainly become a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus his life will be successful in all respects. Thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purport of the 79th chapter of Krishna, the liberation of Balvala and Lord Balarama's touring the sacred places. Jai Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Patita Pavan Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
So tomorrow we will meet again sharp at 7 o'clock in the morning. Till then, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavane